Welcome you all. Myself Dr. B. Nandini, Assistant Professor of Commerce Self-Finance. In this video, we are going to see about how to determine the annual value under the head Income from House Property for the course Income Tax Law and Practice 1. Before briefly going on to see the determination of annual value, what are the contents that I have explained in this video are what is the basis for determining the annual value and what are the conditions to be satisfied to determine the annual value and the houses which are exempted from the determination of annual value and what are the basis for determining the annual value. Let's see, we are going to see about how to determine the annual value for the let out property. The basis of charge for determining the annual value is any building or land appertaining thereto of which the assessee is the owner and is chargeable to tax under the head Income from House Property. For determining the annual value, these are all the basic elements, that is three basic conditions. The three basic conditions to be satisfied to taxable under the head Income from House Property is the property should consist of any land or building appertaining thereto. The assessee should be the owner of the property. The property should not be used by the owner for the purpose of any business or profession carried on by him, the profit of which are chargeable to income tax. That is, the property is not used by the owner for his own business or profession. Let's see who is the owner. Owner means an individual of the property when the document of that property is registered in his name. Next, who is a deemed owner? Under the following circumstances, income from house property is taxable in the hands of individual even if the property is in his name where the property has been transferred to spouse, minor child for inadequate consideration. That means the assessee has transferred his property to his wife or his minor child without any consideration. Let's see what are the income which are exempt from income tax under the head house property. Income from any palace of an Indian ex-ruler and income from house property of local authority and income from property of approved scientific research association and the institution for the development of khadi and village industries and the property which is held by the khadi and village industries boards and a body or authority for administering religions or charitable trust or endowments. The certain funds or educational institutions, hospitals, etc. and the registered trade union and the property which is held by the statutory corporation or an institution or an association financed by the government for promoting the interests of the members of the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe and the cooperative societies for promoting the interests of the members of the scheduled caste or scheduled tribe and the income from property which is possessed by the charitable trust and the property which is held by the political parties for running the political office. Then how to determine the annual value. The basis of calculating the income from house property is the annual value. For determining the annual value, the person or the Income Tax Act has given 4 factors, that is, number 1 is municipal value. Municipal value is the value which is determined by the municipal authorities or panchayat unions for levying the municipal tax. That should be considered for determining the annual value. And the second factor is a standard rent. The standard rent is a rent which is fixed under the Standard Rent Control Act. And the third factor is the fair rent. The fair rent is a rent which is fetched by the property in the similar locality for the same location, that is called as fair rent. And the fourth factor is the actual rent received. Actual rent received is nothing but it's a rent received by the owner of the property for let out of the house. Then here I have given the format to determine the annual value of the let out property. There are 5 steps. Step 1 is determining the expected rent. For determining the expected rent, we have to consider the fair rent, standard rent and municipal valuation. First, we have to take into account the fair rent and standard rent and compare these two, and we have to take into account whichever is higher, the fair rent or the municipal value, whichever is higher is taken, and that higher amount is compared with the standard rent, and these two, among these two, whichever is less is taken as the expected rent. That means the expected rent should not go beyond the standard rent. So the step 1 is expected rent. Then step 2, actual rent received. Actual rent received means rent received minus unrealized rent. Actual rent received means the rent which is actually received by the owner of the property, and unrealized rent means the rent which could not be recovered from the tenant. In order to deduct the unrealized rent from the actual rent received, the assessee has to satisfy the 4 conditions. That is, the unrealized rent should be a bona fide one, and the steps are being taken by the assessee to recover the rent from the default tenant, and the steps are being taken to collect the unrealized rent legally. And fourth one is the default tenant could not occupy any other property of the assessee. Only if these 4 conditions are satisfied, the unrealized rent can be deducted from the actual rent received. So step 2 is actual rent received minus unrealized rent. Then step 3, in the step 3 we have to compare the amount which is determined under step 1, that is expected rent, and amount determined under step 2, that is the actual rent received. We have to compare these two amount, and among these two amount the highest amount is taken. That is the amount as per the step 3, and step 4 is loss due to vacancy. During that previous year, the house may remain vacant for some period. So in that cases, the assessee could not be able to collect the rent. So that is called as loss due to vacancy. So that can be deducted from the amount determined under step 3. So step 4 is loss due to vacancy, and step 5 is the amount determined under step 4, step 3 minus step 4. So that is the amount of gross annual value. Then here I have to give an example how to determine the gross annual value of the let out property. In this example, I have given actual rent as rupees 14,000 per month and municipal rental value rupees 1,20,000 per annum and fair rental value rupees 1,32,000 per annum and standard rent rupees 1,38,000. During the previous year, the assessee is not able to realize 2 months rent, that is unrealized rent, then the house remain vacant for 1 month. So, in this information given, we are going to determine the annual value. Step 1 is expected rent. For determining the expected rent, first we have to take into account fair rent and municipal value. In this example, the fair rent is 1,32,000 and municipal value is rupees 1,20,000, and compare these two amount and taken the amount which is a highest one, and among these two the highest amount is rupees 1,32,000. That highest amount is compared with the standard rent. The standard rent given in this problem is 1,38,000. So 1,32,000 or 1,38,000, whichever is less. So the less amount is 1,32,000. That is the expected rent determined under step 1. Then step 2 is actual rent received. Actual rent received means rent received minus unrealized rent. In this problem, the rent received is 1,68,000 and unrealized rent is 28,000. So, the formula is rent received minus unrealized rent, that is 1,68,000 minus 28,000, that comes to rupees 1,40,000. So, the amount determined under step 2, that is actual rent received, is 1,40,000. Then step 3. Step 3 is step 1 or step 2, whichever is higher. That is step 1 is expected rent and step 2 is actual rent received. So expected rent is 1,32,000 and actual rent received is 1,40,000. The highest amount is 1,40,000. That is the amount as per step 3. Then step 4 is loss due to vacancy. In this problem, the house remained vacant for 2 months. Hence, an assessee suffered a loss due to vacancy. Here, the rent received per month is 14,000. The house remained vacant is 2 months. So, 14,000 into 2, 28,000 is a loss due to vacancy to the assessee. So, loss due to vacancy as per step 4 is 28,000. Step 5 is step 3 minus step 4. So, as per step 3, the amount is 1,40,000 and step 4 amount is, that is loss due to vacancy, is 28,000. So, 1,40,000 minus 28,000, that comes to 1,12,000. That is the gross annual value as per the given example. Thank you.